Can you all hear me in the back? Yes? Okay. I'm like the window, painted white, a manufacturer of squared light. To mold with one's hands the cliff fog, I use my eye. Time's quartered. The physical progress is in the sky. Pelicans drop their hinges, planes on the sea, planing the sea. Over there, on another blue piece, green fringe hangs. The day's back darkens. I used to live in California, and most of these poems were written there because that's where I got my MFA. And a lot of the landscape and the way the seasons worked there was very different for me, coming from the Northeast. So I was really kind of in love with the eucalyptus trees and the way that the leaves smelled. But I was always hearing about how they were not native to California, so they were bad for the ecosystem. But I sort of wound up writing a poem defending the eucalyptus tree in a way, I guess. And it's called To a Tree. Eucalyptus is the object. It means project. Bathe in its leaves. Sob its oddity to the sidewalk. Defend its non-nativity. Take on the tree and fist fight desire. Shadows lie. I see them. Features, limbs, ink with shifty edges. Break it atypically, the day to pieces, each differently visible. Shade open so the street is lined. Evening tree is salty with dusk. Early sun distributes risk. Its lineage casts shadows, shadows that pull a tree down, broken, legible heap. First position. When I was a kid, my family used to take the train from Boston to Florida every year to see my grandparents. And so I spent a lot of time kind of looking out the window of the train, and it was always fun when it stopped at intersections, and I would kind of like wave to people outside the train, so this has got some of those childhood memories in it. First position. In the library, as much quiet as you can fit in your head. I walked across a giant stone and bloodied my knees on the way up. There's another giant stone, one I can't climb. I take the sleeper train through an old-fashioned intersection near the Florida-Georgia border. Everyone waves to me. White book with blue circles, blue book with white circles, paper pile bound in black. Hands emboss the library's walls. It's dark again in the between finger spaces. I'm done and the thoughts are gone. This isn't the greatest time. All around me, voices sell their syncopables. I separate the one from the one. That poem's actually a lot sadder than I remembered it being. My poems tend to be sort of amalgamations of various different experiences that are all compressed into small spaces, so sometimes I think it probably sounds strange if I say it's about a train ride, but then it's got all these other things in it too about books. But to me, it's sort of like the way the mind works, how it can jump from thing to thing, but I think they can all fit into the space of the poem together, so that's kind of how I write. This one's called Old With You. I wait for my wrist lines. If I push them, boxes make themselves. I shorten your name to a letter to make you new. Time spreads. These materials populate my life. Cursors in mud. I turn on the weather ashes, the books. The house can live underwater. The house can wear its rims out. So what if the house? The primitive is a process more real, more hated. Real book, the thoughts in you are secondhand. Sensed. I separate. Try to in the speech act. How successful. Hair flouts head. Bones disclose the skeleton when feet unflex. The uncontrolled must be restricted, the air pinned up like a bride before a crowd. Each face wears a mask of adult faces, adult water from adult showers, adult smiles sensed through the telephone, the ceiling with its stars. I'm not having one kind of experience, the ocean at once, inaudible and flat, hot and thick with weeds. A tree dies alone, wounded up the trunk, as if compression, as if amputation. We might keep the tree and this, the first world I love. The air untacks the sea is coming inside. I'll just read one more. I very briefly, before I left California, worked in a third grade classroom, and one day the teacher brought in all of these various grains and seeds to let the kids look at under a microscope, and I was really amazed by the way that they kind of just started spouting out all these metaphors and similes about what those things look like under the microscope, so that comes into this poem at the end. History. Birds heal the sky, I see through the body scamming the mind. Briefly not alone, then not alone. I work hard to rearrange the sand when I do wrong. The table's flat tone, my pony Christmas hope. Beneath the microscope we see donuts, soap, tree bark chipped apart. I'm just going to read a few newer poems. A number of years ago, or a couple of years ago, I was in California, in Southern California in Palm Springs, and I took this really interesting driving tour that was guided by a podcast that you could listen to in your car. Isn't technology amazing? Like through the desert, where there are all these old shacks that are on sort of plots of land that were, I don't know, either sold or leased during the Works Project administration. And so all the imagery of that landscape and sort of seeing all these dilapidated shacks sort of just all over this landscape came into the poem. Bee belief. A tree knifes the fire, a regional cloud's black tatters point to. The sky owns any homestead. Each square shack's its storage cube. A red truck carries air from cube, sky to sky, and I smear clay on all the baby billboards standing around, working. Do you see the foal in the clay pit pond, the rust on my face? You know I know the heat on you. This is my Cy Twombly tribute poem. He recently passed away, and he did the cover of this book. His paintings are pretty abstract, but I think you can sort of see things from the world in them, like foliage, sort of in this one, sneaking into the poem cover. Obviously, poems are on the brain. And I went to an exhibit of his I didn't know him, by the way. He was a poetry supporter, and so he gave relatively cheap permission to poets to use his paintings on the covers of their books. So that's how that happened. But he had a show called The Natural World at the Art Institute of Chicago a few years ago, and I wrote this poem about it. It's called The Natural World. He drew dirty flowers, then clayey flowers, then mint against gray. Trees look like legs beneath low clouds. Blooms implode up close, mucked with color. Handles for the landscape, sea scraped of water, sketch with hidden humans. All the skeletons here look alike. They're walking stick bones. They're a chromatized privacy. And Claire's already heard this story like 3 times in the last 2 days, but I wrote this poem because Claire used to write poems on her birthday every year, and they'd be called like Claire Becker 25, Claire Becker 26, and so when I turned 30, I decided to copy Claire Becker and write my 30th birthday poem, but it's not called Lily Brown 30, it's called Destroyed Metaphor, which is a little different. Mistook you, sunk moon, renewed, mapped music into my rooms, turned 30, went coastal in Atlantic sieve, got waved, got crossed by diagonal haze, wrote, reviewed solitude, penned a letter or two, thought then of solidity, what crafts a less watery me, forgot time, stacked hips, registered a finger in each armpit. This poem's set in Chicago, where I lived for about a year full-time and another year part-time, and it's called We're in the Ocean or I'm Alone. Repetition smudges in. The lake sets beneath a bird-turned sky. I balance water, rock, flat-topped dirt, the bone I've become. Back home, wind throws a tree on the van out front. Air goes glassy and sharp. I point to a building, hit brick. Consistent animal, it's elemental how we feel. Do you know your photograph mapped to a flash? Okay, I'm just gonna read 2 more. This one is called Postmodernism, sort of reflects on contemporary poetry in an abstract way. Postmodernism. The lawn's shades a hot break when sun's incendiary, or the dog's body in water. I could say she's a lion cresting, but why? Animal to animal. The voice strings me through but cheats. Its eye just makes birds, birds. Not meaningless, the walk I take from library to car, crossing the city in lights to its line. Seaboard. Between thought and touch, I watch. I see you out of your house, the moon thick as twice, quick as spring. Once in a front, I marked love, but the vision went fungal. A family watched me, shocked. I didn't know slip, let boats moor untongued. If I, then anyone, you said, and hatchworked my mind. Thank you so much.